Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service. Today I'd like to present the Venus Ingress, but we're going to call this video Asteroids and the Venus Ingress. When I sat down, I really wanted to also include the house reflection system. And I do think I am going to get into that, but I'm not going to go into the detail that I was so ambitious. It is a lot. It's very overwhelming. I realize that a lot of people who watch my videos, and we're not a very big group, but we're all pretty much novices with the asteroids, and to start doing different things with them could get really complicated. So I thought, well, I'm going to introduce the work, but I'm not going to go very deeply into it. So I did want to bring that out up front. I also want to talk about the fact that this is a very short ingress, but I'm still doing a video on it. That's because it is a very important ingress. Many people have the assumption that Venus is going into Gemini, so it should be a good time. Lots of socializing, Gemini is about, information gathering and all of that. And, it seems like Venus being there would be great. We'd all be more social. We'd be all more charming and all. No, it's not going to be the way that it's going to go. So before I even get to the charts, I do want to explain a little bit about what is going on in this particular ingress. When I pick up the chart, I will talk about the dial, how there's aspects going on. I'm going to talk about particularly the 0 point of asteroids and all that falls there. And I'm going to talk about the aspects of these particular planets and what we have to look forward to. So that's where I want to start with my little speech. I want to talk about how this is not going to be an easy Venus ingress. And it's starting today. It started in the wee hours of this morning. And it means that right now, as I speak to you, Venus is conjuncting Admetus. That means that we might want to be tight with our money. It means that there could be blockages with our money. There could be obstacles with regards to our money or our friends or our relationships. We could be isolating a little bit, We want to get to the bottom of some things. There's a lot of anger in this chart. Not only are we going into this chart from this eclipse, okay? Now, let me talk about the eclipse. I done the eclipse chart about 2 weeks ago. Not very many people view it. And I always notice this, that when I do something ahead of time, people don't view it. But I think because people don't understand that eclipses happen and begin 12 weeks before they're here. In other words, we've been living this eclipse. You don't need to be a brain surgeon to know what's been happening around the world in the last several weeks. It's been quite interesting. We've got all kinds of terrorist activity with Israel and the Gaza Strip. We've got all kinds of protests going on in France with regards to their retirements. We've got in the United States, they've just done away with, they're trying to do away with an abortion drug, which at the same time, simultaneously, I fortunately live in a blue state where we were one of the states that jumped on the bandwagon to get this thing taken care of. So we have a lot going on. We've got Clarence Thomas, a Supreme Court justice who has literally put himself out as and has been bribed. There's no other way to look at it. Venus, Venus. Okay, so all of this is coming at a point where, and by the way, that whole eclipse is riding in Sun, Neptune equals Mars. There's a lot of anger out there, and there's been a lot of anger. I'm going to show you this chart that has Toro, the bully, on the ascendant of the DC chart. And the way these people are acting when they try to expel Democrats from the House, that's a bully. When Clarence Thomas doesn't feel like he has to tell anybody anything because he's too good, he's a bully. Okay, the way Trump has been behaving now that he's finally starting to be indicted, and by the way, that is only the tip of the iceberg, he's being a bully. So, need I say more? I do advise, though, that you live in a different state or different part of the country, East Coast, this would be fine for you. But if you're out in California, you might want to do another chart, see what it looks like. or if you live in another country, you might want to see what this chart looks like. There is activity happening almost in every country across the world. So it doesn't even matter where you are when you look at this video. This Venus ingress, which everyone would be looking forward to under normal circumstances, is happening where it comes right off the chart, right out of the starting block, conjuncting Admetus, squaring Saturn. Now it does trine Pluto, and it does trine an asteroid called Risk. So there's a lot of good stuff there, but though they all square the ability to sleep at night, somnium. So you got all this crap going on. Not a great ingress. It is a very meaty ingress. It does have a sun Jupiter, but Jupiter's one of those planets where if you're already going overboard, you're just going to continue going. So we're so optimistic that we could be making some bad decisions, that we could be, I don't know, especially with money. Gosh, guys, really, there's also a Venus Jupiter in here. You just really want to watch spending. You want to watch being crazy with your friends. It may not go well. So, that's a Venus thing, friends, social life, your relationships, your money. Okay? So all of things ruled by Venus may not go quite as well as you think they will. The other thing is that, as we come out of the eclipse, which as we head into early May, all of it breaks up, and including this Venus. This will be over between the 7th and 8th of May. So we're not talking about a very big period of time. We're just talking about a kind of an active period of time. The information concept will also be very important within that sign of Gemini. I can tell you that the sun also parallels Chiron. It parallels partnerships. It parallels haze. Is a Venus parallel, not the sun, but Venus is parallel haze. This is stuff from the past. This is not all good stuff, you see. And for those people who do research, such as myself, it might be good, making money through research, if you're a research person. But again, if it's coming with Admetus and you're trying to get to the bottom of something, that may work. There's a semi-square, though, to Neptune as it comes in, and it's going to square Neptune as it passes through, because Neptune is in Pisces, and that can be interesting. As a Gemini, the information gatherer comes to square the deceptor, which is Neptune. And so there's a big there. So we really are looking at a lot of different things that are going to come out of this chart, and I do want to briefly go through them. The real highlight I do want to make, though, is the asteroids, and I'm going to be talking about quite a few. I will give you the keywords at that time, and we will, work on those particular asteroids. There's a lot of them, and so it's a great way to learn your asteroids. So we're going to take advantage of that. I'm actually going to call this Asteroids and the Venus Ingress, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to learn about these little rocks and, spend some time with keywords and what does it mean and how those details really can affect this particular chart. So let's go look at it. So here is the chart. I did do it for DC. I just want to point this out. Here's our bully at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. And it makes a wide, but it's the moon. And you can go pretty wide on the moon, but it makes a kind of a wide conjunction to our moon, which you notice it is in the 12th house. So the house of secrets, and also the house where people don't really show how they're feeling. Okay. So that's our ascendant. I'll get back to that. I do want to talk about the fact that this particular Venus for the United States falls in the 6th house. That's your work service, your daily chores, and it's so it's like day-to-day stuff, as well as, because it's work, okay, it's money, but it's also about day-to-day. So it could be referring to day-to-day expenses or things that can cost. Now with this Jupiter Sun going on, you have to also be careful of spending too much money. Other things to be looking for: unusual partnerships, okay, Uranus to Juno. Juno and Uranus are exactly together in the sixth house. So look out for work relationships that might be erratic, work partnerships, where you're working with somebody, but wow, they're off the wall, or where you're going to find out that other people might have difficult, they have difficulties with partners or strange partnerships. Okay. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal, I think, that's happening. Now, it doesn't make connections other than they're sharing the same house and it happens to be going on at the ingress. The same thing with the Jupiter and the Sun in Aries at 21 degrees. So it's really interesting. It's such an interesting chart. Look at this perfect trine between the moon and the sun and Jupiter. Watch how much you spend. Watch how much you give away. Watch how much you go out of the way for your connections, your friends, your partnerships. You want to be very, very careful. Okay? Remember, Adamit is there. Now, with this said, because it's 2245 and Neptune is down here at 2605, they're close enough because it's the moon that there is a moon square Neptune through this one. Okay. And sometimes when that happens, I always think that maybe that's when we can get some information that we did not previously have. That is going to go along with the fact that Venus right now is parallel Hades. So we have a Hades in Cancer in the seventh house, and there is a parallel between Venus and Hades. So there is things from the past. There is something going on from the with regards to money and deterioration. And what did we find out is more stuff about Clarence Thomas and the way he sold out the courts. So this is some of the logistics of this particular chart. I know it looks a little bit overwhelming with all of this. I can tell you this is a health asteroid called Westphalia. And as we said, this is right here in the United States chart. It's Taureau, the bully. And then when we go to the other side, this is actually going to show up in the dial. So I'll just go through this part briefly. Here you have 25 degrees. Now look at this, Taureau opposite logic. So you have Urania. See that Urania at 2548? That's Urania. Urania relates to logic. It's astrology, it's computer programming, it's a few things. But what it relates to is logic, okay? Now, in this particular case, logic is opposing the bully, okay? I don't think I need to explain that. I think that the fact that people are bullying, sometimes it goes very much against the logic, okay? Now, I haven't talked about, and I just want to check that because, yeah, it's Rockefeller. It's money, okay? So I don't have for some of them I don't have glyphs, so I use Rockefeller. It's obviously money, and money is causing chaos. And in the United States, that is what we have been finding. When the Supreme Court compromises itself and does rules because some billionaire decides that he wants a particular law in place, which is basically what happened, then they're creating, money helps to create this chaos. Okay. So just really briefly, I want to because I know how important the asteroids are. Memory, see that moon with an M, that is one of the memory asteroids. It is still in effect or in play because it's within the 10 degrees of that descendant. And so memory is going to play a factor. It already has in the storytelling of Thomas, our justice. So just to, go through this, you have the Sun and Juno on the angle of this chart. They are at the IC. they are sitting with some really cool other asteroids like Chiron. So we do know that as a result of what is happening in the next, I think it's about 3 weeks. That's about all it is. It's like I said, between May 7th and May 8th. Today is April 11th. So maybe about a month, not quite. You're going to see that there's going to be layers of complication. Um, some cases caused by industry or as a result of an industry, something that's ongoing. Well, we are having a real problem calling in the lobbyists for the gun industry. So that has been a real issue. I like the fact that Apollonia is there, but I really like that Chiron is there. And the reason why Chiron being there is so important is because Chiron, though it's not, it's only conjuncting it because it's on an angle, but it's about 5 degrees away. And I got to be honest with you, a little less than 5 degrees. Chiron sun is a lot of times referring to a changing or a turning point. So I think that there are things that are going on in this next month will be a turning point. Well, I can tell you already today, one of the expelled Democrats got back in, and the other one is expected to get in on Wednesday. So all of that the Republicans did was show what bullies they can be, and they changed nothing. But it is a turning point because it made the whole country very aware of what these supermajorities think they can do, especially because they cheated to get where they are. So it's really, they're called supermajorities in the state houses, but reality is that they're made up of minority groups. So it's just really interesting how they got there. And that's something that needs to be examined, and hopefully it will. But I have questions about even what's going on at the Gaza Strip and how much Netanyahu has to do with it. So the question of that kind, and you'll see later, there's a lot of stuff in this. So we see that out. And then when we go to the final, where I like to go through, we have Medusa, okay, just barely in there, but it's there. And it's all retrograde. So Medusa is that ability to make people jump through hoops by really just looking at them. So there is going to be some real looking going on, and I also, well, I'll get to it, but there's also an Artemis on right here. It's conjuncting Venus, which is again hunter-prey. So it's like hunting for things, hunting for money. I love that the Democrats have a philosophy now, follow the money. And they say it all the time. And they should, because the Republican Party is a very wealthy party. As a matter of fact, those people are so out of touch with how the rest of us live. I can't believe that people even vote for them. Why would you vote for somebody who doesn't even know how to go to a supermarket? Or you voted for somebody who, when there was a shooting in the area, and they asked that congressman, I think it was a congressman or it was a senator, what about, how do you feel about it? You have young children. His answer was, oh, we homeschool. Well, poor families don't have that option. 2 people need to work. So it's unfortunate, but they're out of touch. So we go on, and there's just really part of the problem, and this is going to be a huge problem for at least for the next couple of weeks, but I think it's going to be a huge problem all the way around, is Apollon running with, it's a trans-Neptunian, it's running with the South Node. There are so many issues from the past, and because people keep doing things the same way, which is we know from doing node videos, that there's just so much of it. So much of this bad stuff. Okay, so it's interesting. It's just a lot of stuff. So that's just looking at the generals of the chart. So I'm just kind of going through this piecemeal. I do want to talk about how, and I did mention that we have a Sun-Jupiter conjunction. It's also parallel, so it's really strong. And that it doesn't necessarily do anything but make us optimistic. What that means is we might spend too much money, we might depend on the wrong people, we might socialize with the wrong people, but we're all doing it because we're so optimistic. Not a good thing to be. Not right now, anyway. I did mention the trine of the sun and the moon. I don't know, I think I brought it up, how the sun and the moon are in a very close, tight trine with that Jupiter. And that means that Um, we get along well with each other. So when I say Venus is affecting our social life, I think it is. I think we are going to narrow our social lives. I think we are and do have to watch money. But I also feel that this this Venus with um, and the parallel to the partnership, the trine of the sun and the moon is all kind of again talking about how easy it is to make these connections. A good example, and this has already started, was how Thomas just came into this friendship and just has been for 20 years getting all kinds of money from this man and doing his bidding. I mean, wow. Nobody knew. Well, they do now. But the reality is that that could change things. And that sun trine moon with Jupiter there could be discussing the excessive relationships that are excessive. I think we all have them. We have relationships that we know that when we're with a certain person, we tend to spend too much money. We all have friends like that. We all have situations where, oh yeah, or we drink too much, or we eat too much, or whatever. And a lot of times it's inspired by partnerships. So be careful of that. Now, other things that are worth talking about here is that Venus is presently squaring Saturn. Okay, so we have Venus in Gemini and we have Saturn in, where is it? I'm looking. It's in, here it is. It's in the second house. And I'm going to get to this house thing later that I wanted to discuss. But there's a square between the sixth house Venus, making money, and Saturn in the second house. We can't spend money. We have to be very weary and watch money when Saturn is squaring Venus. And those people who do spend too much often very much regret it. So we do have that. Neptune, it'll eventually square that too, but Neptune tends to be hanging out in the third house. So that relates to neighborhoods, siblings. Siblings are going to show up somewhere else. I'll show you. So there's a lot of stuff going on there as well. Now, I did mention Admetus. I think it's really important to note that here's Gemini, here's Admetus, about 2.5 degrees away, which in Uranian or any other, that's still an aspect. And it is also a reflection of, it's a parallel as well, so it's really strong, of how we do have to narrow things, how we do have to get to the bottom of things, that the only way to really use the optimism is to get to the bottom of things. And I think it's interesting because of that falling right on the IC of this chart, so the bottom, it's the base of the chart. And how, Saturn in conjunction with that Venus, that square is really asking us to kind of look at what we value and is it worth it? It's really important, we have to think about that. So that's really interesting. Now, with that Saturn, because I like to talk about this, we have Pandora right here, because remember, this is about the asteroids. So Pandora is squaring, I'm sorry, it's not squaring. Yes, it is. It's squaring Venus. Surprise! Surprise expenses. That's what you can really look for in this situation. Could be surprise money, doubtful. I think you're going to be surprised where money goes and where money comes from. That's what's been happening in the press here. Right with that is telling us that with this square, with this Saturn, we're only at the beginning. And I do believe that's true of every single story that's out there right now. That even the stuff we're beginning to discover about Clarence, we're only hitting the tip of the iceberg. I know for a fact this first indictment of Trump, tip of iceberg. Tip. Okay? So this is only the beginning of Saturn. Saturn is accountability. Saturn is asking us to be accountable. Okay? So you take, this is the beginning, Clotho, right here, of accountability. Especially with regards to value. What do we value? Well, apparently Clarence Thomas does not value being a justice over money. That's something to be looked at. surely it's a human condition, but really, I think that the problem is that we expected more from our justices. And I think that's the reason why the whole court system is probably going to be overhauled at some point in the very near future. I know people have been working on it. So in this chart, these are all the things we're looking at. And I'll get to the asteroids in a minute. What I'm going to do now is I actually want to take you to the report, and we're going to look at the list. I did already do this. It's interesting that it's not up because I already looked at it. But what I wanted to do was we'll look at Venus because that's the main concern here. Here's our trine to Pluto, our square to Saturn, trine to Ceres, which is the mom, the mother, okay, and families, caretaking and all of that. It is a counter. It's a contraparallel or an opposition, I like to say, to Cupido, which is the absolute family. And then here's all this Admetus I was talking about. Okay, so a lot of this I did discuss, but I did want to look at it. Now, I also looked at the sun and moon. There's our trine, and there's our parallel that I've already spoke about. But here's a few more. There is a conjunction to Vesta, which is, our work. Remember that the sixth house was huge in the United States chart, but Vesta's there, which means work concepts are going to be big regardless. The sun is down at the IC, which means it is opposite the midheaven, is also opposite Zeus. Now, the sun and the moon are in a trine, and they're running with Jupiter. Zeus represents guns. I think that's a lot of people being angry about the guns and the fact that they won't do anything about the guns. So, of course they won't. They're getting money. So the politicians make money on those guns. So because of kickbacks and things like that. So anyway, I did want to go through all of this. Saturn, there's not a lot of Mars, but Mars trine Saturn is not good. I know people say, well, there's a trine. No. I also think the anger against organizations, families, I do think the way sometimes the politicians act is against families. So I can see that. But I also have to tell you that the organizations that have been funding the justices and they've been funding these guns are also coming to the surface. So that will be interesting. So I did want to go through that. I thought there was a semi-square for Neptune. Now, there isn't, but there will be an absolute square when the time comes, which will be, another week or two? It will be Venus squaring Neptune. Not a great time to start a romance or a relationship. So I definitely want to point that out. If I can tell you anything, this is not a good time to start a new relationship. So it is a good time, though, to be with your friends and I'll show you why, but then to get down into the dirt, so to speak, and get to know these people. This is a good time to do that. All right? And I'll show you why. Okay. So, I have to show you in the dial. It's Sphinx. It's over here, but I'm on the wrong thing. So let me jump to the dial, okay, which is where we're going to end up. And you can see that I have done some prep work here. Okay, so here we are. I did want to show this Sphinx. Where was it? Sphinx is about, maybe it was on the other one. Let me go back. I write these notes, but I never say where I found anything, okay? Which is pretty bad. Sphinx, I know I saw, here it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, so, yeah, it's right near Uranus, the partner. It's like a big thing as you go from 15 degrees to 17 degrees. Okay, so you're questioning, by the way, this is the Aries point. You're questioning the vehicles. Now, you could be questioning your vehicle, and perhaps there could be some issues with the vehicle, but I think that when we look at this, we question vehicles, like we question the Supreme Court. That's a vehicle of sorts, right? It's a vehicle for law. So there is a questioning of things. It also means it's going to leave a lot of questions out there for us, okay? That is definite. So go back. The reason why I didn't see the dial is down here. So, because we're at the 15-degree fixed point, which is the Aries point, we will take a peek at that in a second. But for right now, yes, 15 degrees of Taurus. So it should be right, there it is, right here. And you know what else is really interesting? They're questioning health and well-being. Now it's interesting because I was part of an astrology group recently where I pointed out that we're in the Sun, Neptune equals Mars, because people were getting so angry. What they were getting angry about is the COVID and the vaccination, which is kind of interesting because there's a lot of questions here, and the vehicle. So I think a lot of people may still have questions about that. But I also believe that this is about women's health care, which is still an ongoing issue, unfortunately. So that's a factor. But let's talk about the asteroids that are playing a role in this, because that's what this video is supposed to be about. Although I've touched on a lot of asteroids already, I do want to talk about the trine with Venus, Risk, our asteroid Risk. It's retrograde, but it's still there, and Pluto. And I do believe that people who are, we're in a place now where we have to look at things and we have to redo them and we have to, reinvent. There's your Pluto, okay? But Pluto's also power trips, big time. And Venus is about, money. So there's risks related to money that deal with power, okay? Or power plays. Now, people who are taking risks, people like you and me, not politicians, we see here somnium, which means they're going to lose sleep. Okay, so you're taking risks, and even though it's for the best, and it'll probably work out okay, you might lose sleep. So get ready for that. That's anybody who's in that position. Okay, and I'm really sticking at the 0-degree points. Asteria is, and this is where I have to go back to my list. Asteria, I don't believe is even on here. Yeah, it is. There it is. Or is that Abundantia? I gotta look it up. I gotta look it up because some of them I don't have glyphs for, so I have to use first initials and all of that stuff. But all I have to, oh yeah, it's 0 degrees of Gemini, so I am right. Okay. That is not, so that's an abundance of. Asteria, I do not have an asteroid for right now, and that would fall right with that Venus. What Asteria means, some keywords: prayer, meditation. Usually shows up when people are going through a lot and they have to begin to pray for a better outcome, or pray. So there is a lot of prayer. There's a lot of Asteria. So it also plays out, though, that it's religious organizations. But I think of that more as Cupido, and I'll get to that in a second, that are getting too involved in politics. Especially in the United States, we have a very clear, distinct law that religion doesn't enter into it. Well, it can't. We have so many different religions here, so many different cultures here. We can't have a religion. We have at least 5 or 6 of them, okay? And so for that reason, they're really smart, and they said, no, you can't do that. Well, we do have a whole group of people trying to do that right now. So that is, the Christians now have to be hauled back, if you ask me, because they've been just going crazy. And we're finding out more and more just how crazy. So we have that. And then, more notes. Then we go on to the Pluto is in opposition. Okay. Now, this is real interesting, okay, because Pluto, which is in Aquarius, is running a very tight opposition to Hebe. I didn't put I want to double check to make sure it was. Hebe is an enabler. What are we learning? Well, in the United States, we're learning a lot about enabling. I think you're going to be learning a lot about enabling in a lot of these things, because enabling is literally opposite Pluto, which means that it's also making formations to our Venus, Okay. It's a sextile, I believe, to Venus, but it really is an opposition to Pluto. So we want to be aware of that. Okay. I also want to point out here with Venus, we have Isis, which is siblings, pieces of things. I think we're only getting pieces of information, so let's go there. And here's one, Proserpina, um, Persephone. I'm sorry, that's Persephone. They both mean the same. Persephone is talking about there are some things in life that we need to go out on our own. We need to do it on our own. It's a journey that we can only do on our own. We can only do by ourselves. It is conjuncting that Venus. So it may have to do with our social life. It might have to do with our relationships. And it could have to do with our money. Remember that Venus fell in the sixth house. Jobs, service, things of that nature. Okay? So, very interesting stuff. I definitely wanted to talk about. Let me see what else I've got here. Okay, there's also an opposition from Venus to faces. Are we able to read what's going on with those people around us or not? It's very interesting. So that would mean that that is in Sagittarius. And there it is. Yeah. Look at what's going on in a person's face. Try to read faces. I think that what people are presenting and what they're showing on their face could be two different things, especially in our social life. So you want to be aware of that. So that's something to be aware of, okay? Now, moving on, because we can, I would like to, I did mention Perseverance, and I did, okay. So now this is the direct line, and I did pull up some of, now the other thing to point out is that at each one of these 0 points creates a, what they call or refer to as a golden triangle, okay? So white moon, Selena, okay? Pluto and Venus are forming what is called a golden triangle. Now up here, a little bit out of the way, you have chaos and disruptions because of money. R, Rockefeller. I don't have an asteroid for it, so I have to use the R. So you've got chaos because that's interrupting things. But you know what's so cool about that Selena is that she brings out talents and abilities and things that we didn't even know we have. So there's some good stuff coming from that. And that is going to play out in this Venus Pluto. What I think results from this is that we look at money differently. And I'll show you that again when we get back to the houses. But there's a transformation on our value system. There's a transformation on money. So, I mean, one of the things that I talk about often, I'm a big person to get other people out and vote. I'm a real advocate for women. I always have been. And particularly right now, it's very important, and I'm telling people to vote. It's one of the things that we have to realize with this kind of formation is that, you know, that we have to do that. We have to get out there and change the story. And it's true in every country that can do that. And I think even countries that can't do it are still going to do it. Where we have to transform. You don't want to vote for people who have a lot of money. This is what I always say to people. Stop voting for rich people. They're out of touch. They don't even go to supermarkets. They have no clue. Why do people vote for them? One of the mass shootings took place, I think it was the one that was in Tennessee, and a lawmaker was asked, well, aren't you concerned for your own children? He said, no, we homeschool. Well, good for you, but the most of us can't do that. We need 2 incomes. They're out of touch. So we need to get people who live more like us. This kind of thing makes me happy to see. Makes me very happy to see it. And I don't care if it's coming from this chaos that's coming because of the misrepresentation of money and to people who have money. Okay? So one last thing I want to look at, because I know this is getting long, is the 2230. So if it comes at 0 degrees, then at 2230, and we can go, 10, 20, 22, 30, brings us to the moon. Okay, to the moon. Okay, and it equals hubris, which is faded. Where we are right now, the people, and they're rising up, which is wonderful to see. Spent my whole life waiting for this because too many people in this country do not pay attention to what's going on. And I grew up at a time when I saw them, I saw what was leading to this. I saw it. I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the few people that really saw this coming for decades. I knew we'd be here, and we're here. And so it's hubris. It's meant to be. It's hubris. And it brings in chaos. Okay, that's Eris. She purposely sets up chaos. That's what she does. So that we can change. Turning points, Chiron. Yay! Heal. Heal. That's what Chiron represents. Healing. So I definitely, absolutely feel that we really want to pay attention to the hubris. We want to ask questions of our, go down here to that 15 degrees, because that falls in the Aries point. So just really quickly, you want to ask questions of your connections, okay? You really do, for your own well-being. Here, look at this, Pluto, Venus, right on the Aries point. Pluto, Venus, just as I was showing you, okay? You also have there Cupido, Moon, which is families. But it's also organizations that maybe have tried to rip apart aspects of this country. And then I would have to go to the Christian organizations because they're the ones with all the money that have been doing it. So we have this incredible setup here, which really highlights the chaos as a result of money and that necessity to transform. Also, Hebe, right there with Pluto. Okay, this is like we're not going to hopefully we don't transform in a way that enables people, but yet that might be what's happening in the very beginning. Okay, so we have to be alert to that kind of stuff into the chart as well. Okay, I can tell you that at 22:30, here we go, things are going slow. They're happening, but they're very slow. Look at politics here. Huh? Not so far outside of that Aries point, is it? Politics is an issue everywhere. Politics is causing Netanyahu to hide what he's been doing and cause problems in the Gaza Strip. Because of what Trump did, he has to be a bully now and tries to start a civil war. Won't work, but he's trying. You have all of these bullies at play here, all over the world, and it's really up to us, the people, the moon, to take care of it. So, hold on. I think somebody's here, my dog. I think the last thing that I want to leave this with, before I, jump off of here, is a couple of things. I want to point out Hade's node. These are relationships from the past, maybe deteriorating. The fact that there's so much deterioration, Hades, Apollon, many, deterioration. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But also, look at this. Sun, Astrea, none of this is going to be easily resolved. As a matter of fact, there's a lot that will not be resolved. The cool thing is that this is only a few weeks, and I can honestly tell you that when it comes to the Trump episodes, there's a lot to come. So if you're somebody who's interested in all the different indictments, I think they're going to be indicting him over and over and over again, all the way through September, maybe even longer. But I think by then they'll have most of them out. So that's going to be going on. And again, if you're in a different country, look to the leaders that are there, because there could be some corruption issues from the past that will become known overall to the people. And it may be something worth looking at. So with that said, as you can see, meaty is a good word. Hopefully you were able to follow along with the asteroids. This is going to be entitled The Asteroids and the Venus Ingress, because I really do want to direct the videos to that. Now, the very final thing I want to do, I'm going to go back into the chart. I'm going to do a house reflection system. So before I do that, I do want to tell you that what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an arrow on this Venus on a 360 dial. It won't be a chart, it'll be a dial. I have to apologize ahead of time. For some reason, my asteroid glyphs don't work on that. So some of them are written in and some of them are numbers. I'm going to point out only the ones that I want to talk about. And I'm not going to go into great depth on this. I'm only going to do one or two reflections. I'm not going to do the whole system. I do want to point out before we get in there, because it's going to be confusing, how this is going to work. All right, because I'm going to do what's called and I'm going to use my notes because I don't want to make a mistake. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the house setup for Venus. Now, if it's a planet, it's automatically going to be put into what's called a fourth house. So Venus would be the fourth house of what we're going to be looking at, okay? That means that the house before it would be the third house, and the house after it would be the fifth house. I got it. Okay, so when I pull this up, I'm going to do a little bit of reflection. So here we go. Okay, so this is my 360 dial, and again, I do apologize. I cannot use, for some reason, I got to figure it out, and I got some people to talk to about this to see if I can straighten out this particular dial. But let's talk about this for a moment. Okay, so Venus, which is right here, and you can tell that I've already been working on this. There we go. This is Venus, and you could see, look at that, Jupiter, Mars, Hades, Sun, Mars, Sun, a lot of anger, a lot of anger, a lot of anger. I don't care where you live, there's a lot of anger. So here we're looking at, I'm going to start this way, third to fourth house. So everything from 30 to 60 is our third house, and from 60 to 90 is our fourth house, okay? And in this reflection system, we're looking from the third to the fourth house, second to the fifth house. We're looking at the first to the, remember that it, again, you know, it goes backwards. The first house to the sixth house. The 12th house reflects to the 7th house. The 11th house reflects to the 8th house, and the 10th house reflects to the 9th house. Okay, so this is a reflection system. It's sort of like you're telling a story, and they're reflecting. Now we're going to start here just because I love this. You have this node Mercury in the third house, and it's reflecting toward Admetus. Okay, it's almost like our connections, what we know. And it's Admetus. We're hitting blocks. We want to get to the bottom. There's our Sphinx. It's leaving us with a lot of question marks. So the questions, okay, reflect to Admete. We need to get to the bottom because we have so many questions. So there's one. You can also do this Jupiter Sun hanging out over here. Okay, so if that's the third, this is the second house. Jupiter Sun is in the house of the value system. The value system of Jupiter Sun, so it could be optimistic, could be, we've got Apollon, which is an asteroid. There we have Industria right at the edge. We have Astrea there. Okay, I just happen to, you know, I know some of the numbers and some of it is written out. They all reflect, now they reflect to, here we go, Hades, Kronos, Sun, Jupiter, Hades, Kronos. And that's something to think about. And Mars is there. So there's anger about deterioration of the past, probably by authority figures. Check that out, no matter where you live, okay? Because that's what's going on here. So all of this reflects here. I just thought that was amazing. So I didn't want to go into it a whole lot more. I'll just do little bits at a time because I don't really want to overwhelm anyone. I do want to stay with the asteroids. Even my teacher is happy that I'm doing the asteroids. So I think that because there's nothing out there on asteroids, I really want to stay with the asteroids. But I also have to point out, and by the way, look at the star it makes. Venus makes a star, okay? I cannot tell you how strong this Venus Ingress is. It's not great, but it is strong. And you can see it by the chart. Look at that star. So when we're working with a reflection system, you would go all the way through. However, when we do medical astrology, because I work with so many asteroids, you ultimately end up eliminating things. You just cut stuff out of the picture because it's not really necessary. I didn't do that. It's hard to do on solar fire. Not hard. It's just not as easy as it would be in Nova cartwheels, and I'm not quite ready. Chart wheels. I'm not quite ready to do the chart wheels. So eventually we'll get there. For now, for our purposes, we need these asteroids. And having these asteroids, whether it be on a 360 dial, a 90-degree dial, or the wheel itself, that's what's most important for us. So with that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. And as always, I wish you all only happy reading.